Hello, Nick here from Too Many Roles, and today I thought I'd talk about what got me into board gaming. Because board gaming can be quite a difficult thing to begin and, to actually explore the world of what board gaming can hold. Because so many households nowadays will have Monopoly or Cluedo or Yahtzee, like the typical games, the typical household appliance games. And no one ever stretches out beyond that, and it's kind of one of those ones where it can be difficult. It's daunting. There are so many board games out there that can take anyone's fancy, and it's like I started board gaming and I was just chucking everything out there into what I could try and games that I could try and be better than Monopoly and the Cluedo. So much so that before this I started writing a script for what this video would be, and I figured there's just so many games I can't write a script about it, which is why you're going to be hearing me umming and ahhing between my thoughts, but I'm going to do my best to instead show you guys the journey I've done into board gaming and what got me into this hobby. Because, as I say, these like pre-war games of Monopoly, I don't like it. I don't like Monopoly. I've played Monopoly one too many times and had to go around the board and pass go with not much to say for it too many times. Games have become more evolved. I'm not saying Monopoly is the worst game ever, and if you enjoy Monopoly then that's all on to you. But it's more, games have just gotten better. We have more variations of the games that we love. You know, games like Cluedo, which is a very beloved household game, you can have different variations of that, like Mysterium is a huge one that people love to do, or you can even go and take that detective work of Cluedo and bring it into, Sherlock Detective Agency, and play one where you have all the evidence in front of you, you have to solve it yourself. Board games have just come so far, and so if you're having trouble thinking about where to go, maybe in this video, some of the games that I started in my journey might help you into spreading into board games, or it might just bring you some light into some board games that I'm into and the kind of things that you'll also be seeing in this channel going forward. So, the first thing that got me into board games, the first ever board game that I played, this is excluding those pre-war board games, it will be Pandemic. Now, Pandemic is probably one of the best board games. It would be in my top 5 board games, and this was one of my first purchases, so I am very happy that one of my first purchases is a fantastic game. Pandemic is a game where you are working together cooperatively to find the cure for diseases, and so you'll be drawing cards from the stash pile and trying to get 5 matching colours, or 4 depending on the class, to create a cure and to save humanity. This Pandemic system is massively popular. It turned into games like Reign of Cthulhu, which we have a video on the channel for if you want to go and watch that. And it also was one of, not the first, but one of the first games to adapt the Legacy format, which is a format we maybe get into at another time. And it works perfectly. I've played Season 1 of the Pandemic Legacy, probably one of the best Legacy games I've ever played. And we still frequently bring Pandemic back to the table whenever we want to play a game. We played it wrong, horrendously wrong, the first time we played it, and this is a point that I do want to make apparent. Reading rules, it's never fun sitting down and reading rules, and some of these games have huge rule books. I mean, KDM, as a clear example, massive rule book and so many rules that you need to keep track of. And if you're the person within the group that you're the one that's buying these games, you're learning the rules, you're teaching everyone else, it could be quite a lot for one person to handle. But Pandemic, simple. It's so simple. The rules are there, and we played the rules wrong. We eventually learnt the rules properly, but it was fun. The challenge was there. We lost a lot in those beginning games when we first started playing the game. But it was so enjoyable. The mechanic was still, even though when we're playing it wrong was unfair, was still fantastic. And it's a game that even now, as I say, we will come back to all the time. So if you're looking to start off somewhere, Pandemic, just grab yourself Pandemic. It is the great starting one, and it can be up to 1 to 4 players. So if it can just be you and one of your friends can do it, or you can get a group of people. Now, after the Pandemic, during this time I was having a lot of people around for parties, and we were doing a lot of drinking and just mini games and stuff that we would play with in our group. So naturally that went from doing Pandemic, which is kind of like a chill game to do, into doing party games and trying to have a look for party games. So this is where my board games stretched out to that location. Now there are so many different types of party games and what you would consider party games to choose from. Very popular at the moment at the time of doing this video is Flip 7, which is a card game, which is very basic and easy to do, but I didn't have that at the time. So the games that I was doing is kind of the classic. So we have Uno. Uno is just anal? Uno is one of the staple piece household games that I would still fight for, that needs to stay as a household game. This has broken relationships. It has broken friendships. It has created so many stories, and it is phenomenal. I don't need to tell you what Uno is because you know what Uno is. But I will tell you what this next game is. When you play Uno so many times, you kind of like the system, but you want to vary it up. You want to change it up a little bit. And so that's where the first party game I bought came in. And that is a game called Muffin Time. This is the first edition of Muffin Time. They've made the box much smaller and easier to use now. But Muffin Time is by Big Potato Games, and also it has art from all of the ASDF, or ASDF, however you want to pronounce it, movies by Tomska, which obviously at the time when I was younger, I loved those movies. They're still going on now, I think. Does phenomenal work and phenomenal skits, and they made a board game, a little card game even, out of all of that. With Muffin Time, you need to be the first person to 10 cards, and then it has to start your turn with you having 10 cards. Every single card is different, and these cards are traps, counters, or action cards. So it just adds a little bit more flair to the Uno game, as opposed to it just being the numbers. You've got, if someone says your last name, or if someone addresses you by your first name, they need to pick up a card as one of the trap cards. Or you have basically the equivalent of Uno reverses that can happen if someone tries to do a trap for you. It had you second guessing every single action that you want to do. Do you want to address that person by their name? Do you want to address their pronouns? Do you want to stand up? Do you want to yawn? No, you don't want to do any of these things because you're worried as soon as someone puts a trap card down, am I going to trigger that trap? Am I going to have to discard my cards to get myself further away from the 10 card victories? Or you could be one of the people that were in one of our games where we were sitting down for 40 minutes. We were playing this as like there were 8 people, so you know it can go up to 2 to 8 people. We were at the max, so it was going to be a long game. We had 8 people, we were already playing for about 30, 40 minutes, and someone played a card that reset the entire game. So you can be one of those people as well. The game is so much fun. It is chaotic, and it was just laughter. And I still don't think I've seen every single card from that game. And I believe the newer edition, I think it's actually on the 3rd edition now that they has 50 plus new cards. And I will probably be picking that up, because the game is just fun, and it is a nice little warm-up game as well before some of the other games if you wanted to play something a little bit more serious. Some of the other party games though that we've got, kind of the other ones that we started going into one called Total Recall. Now Total Recall is based on the episode Total Recall from Rick and Morty, where they don't know who's a parasite or who was real in their life, and that is where they've made this deception card game from. It's a very small box, so it's very simple and easy to pack away. But the point of the game is you don't know who's a real human and who's a parasite, and you and your team need to work together to try and kill all of the parasites before the end of the game. However, there's a chance that, you know, the person who you're working with and you've known your entire life is actually a parasite, and you need to try and figure that out, because you might think that you've cleared the whole board and you've wiped out all the parasites just to have one of your own be a parasite. It is very quick, it is very fun as well, and honestly the game is a good start in if you wanted to start going into deception board games and lying and manipulation board games, which I very much am a big fan of. And that was a very good addition to start introducing me into that. Going on from Rick and Morty, Total Recall, and actually staying a little bit with the deception gameplay is a game called Chameleon. And Chameleon, or The Chameleon, is a game where you'll all be given out cards, and those cards will have a grid on it, which will tell you whereabouts the word is on another table that you need to try and think of a word that matches that one. Kind of a terrible explanation that I've just said of it there, but basically you have people all around you, you have those cards, and you'll roll the dice, and you'll look at your little cheat sheet, and you can see there's like, oh, B3, and you'll see on B3 on this particular sheet that the whole board's playing with is movies, and let's say the movie is Jaws. You then need to look at that word and try and think of a word that relates to Jaws without being too obvious, because amongst all of you, one or two of you are the chameleon, depending on how many players you're playing with. And the chameleon just simply has a card that says, you're the chameleon. So you don't have the cheat grid to be able to know what movie it's been pointed to. You might, everyone else has Jaws, but you might think, oh, maybe it's Jurassic Park if you're the chameleon. So you now need to think of a word as the chameleon that is, you know, accurate enough that people might think that you're talking about Jaws, but then not too specific that people are like, well, they're talking about Jurassic Park. And then what will happen after everyone's thought about their words, I think you have about 30 seconds, everyone says their word, one after the other, and it goes around in the circle, you say your word straight away, no umming and ahhing, otherwise people might be suspicious, and then the accusations start in trying to guess who's going to be a chameleon or not. I remember that one of the ones that I had, there was a reference to, I think we were doing colours, and I think it was blue, which was like the colour. And when it came to me to say the word, my word was curry. Now, some of you might have gotten the reference straight away, but my reference was towards a photo, which is the Sonic curry, which is like a blue curry. In that instance, I think it was a little bit too ambiguous. I still managed to get away with it. I wasn't the chameleon. But it's kind of the fun ways. Your brain needs to think quickly about how you can try and blend in. Going back to the example that I had, where let's say it's Jaws, but the chameleon thinks it's Jurassic Park, one of the words that they can be is just like, oh, animatronic is what they can think of as a thing. And you know, animatronic might be able to go to loads of things. That can capture Jaws, that can capture Gremlins, that can capture Jurassic Park, just as examples of what some other movies are on there. So you've given yourself a broader horizon to try and capture the right movie from. And that's it. You're lying to your friends about, you're gaslighting your friends. It's very quick. It is tons of fun. Gaslighting is only acceptable if it's within the means of the game, okay? Don't gaslight people outside of board games, that's just not fun. And then some of the other party games. This party game I actually got later, much later actually. I only got this last year, but it is phenomenal. And it is a small game called Can't Stop. Now, Can't Stop is a game where what you are doing is you are climbing to the top of the mountain peak, and you need to be the first person to reach the end of this mountain peak 3 times, and the game is gambling. It's not a deception game this time, you are gambling with dice rolls. You are rolling 4 dice, and whatever 2 numbers you can make out of those dice by adding the numbers together is where you'll put an ice pick onto the mountain and make progress towards the peak of the mountain. The numbers go from 2 to 12, because those are the only numbers that you can roll on a 4d6 dice, and put them into a combination. And it goes from 2 being the lowest point, where you only need to get 3 of which to be able to reach the top, or 7 being the highest point, which I can't remember the specific number. It's a lot to be able to get it. So you can sort of take the gamble and be like, oh, I rolled a 7, so I can start on that peak. But you're going to need to roll 7 a hell of a lot more times to reach the top. Whereas if you've got a 2 or a 12, you need to roll it less often, but it's so much rarer to achieve. Is someone who's put down a 7 going to capture that 7 before you get the 12 or the 2? It's a lot of fun. It's a push your luck game. And if you have that little gambling side of you, Can't Stop is a phenomenal way to be able to capture that gambling aspect. I've had so much fun with it. Probably again, that one will go into probably my top 5 games to play alongside Pandemic, but that's because I do have that little gambling itch, and Can't Stop is so much fun. I've played it a lot of times on Board Game Arena as well, before I ended up finally buying an edition, which a friend bought for me from South Korea. because that is how hard it was to get hold of the version that I wanted, because the rest of them are cloth, and I don't want the cloth versions. We're now going to move on to some of the games I ended up playing on Tabletop Simulator. Now, Tabletop Simulator is a game that is on Steam where you can sit there and download mods of board games and play the board games on the PC. You will see that there are games on the channel that I have played using Tabletop Simulator. I understand that people don't like watching playthroughs on Tabletop Simulator and or using Tabletop Simulator, so it is up to you how you if you want to decide it or not. I found it was fantastic to get me into the hobby. The only thing that I encourage so much is that if you are to play a game on Tabletop Simulator and you enjoy the game, please purchase the game physically, so then that way you can support the creator, which is what I end up doing quite a lot of the time. Some of the games in which I played on Tabletop Simulator to begin with, and then bought copies of because I loved it so much, is Carcassonne. Carcassonne is a tile placement game where you're working against other people to try and get the most points. You're getting points from making the roads, from making castles, or controversially in my group, making fields. We're not allowed to make fields if playing with certain people because they don't understand the rules too much, but I digress on that one. I'm a field main. It is really fun, and you're making such a pretty map at the same time, putting these one tile down at a time, one after the other. I played that originally on tabletop, really easy to learn as well. And the only downside with playing it in person is you need to count up the points yourself. If you're doing it on tabletop, it counts up the points for you. There are a tremendous amount of expansions for this game though. I only have the one so far. So if you enjoy Carcassonne and you want to add more tiles or you want to add more mechanics to it, you can build up on that. There is tons and tons of tons to be able to do that. And it is just, again, another phenomenal game. It's so easy to learn, as I keep on saying, as I keep on stressing. That's kind of one of the main points with this. Is like, if you're trying to get into board games, you don't want to start off playing board games that are really hard to learn. Again, I feel susceptible for that. Well, I've got it over there, I see off screen, I just can't be asked to go pick it up. One of my first board games was Dark Souls, the board game, and that game was just, there's a lot that you need to learn. When I'm coming from Pandemic, jumping into Dark Souls, it was staggering, it was way too much. So it's nice to start off slow with board games. I understand that there are so many board games that might be, a video game that you quite enjoy, or you might just enjoy the thematics that it might bring. Sometimes it's nice to just wait before purchasing them, or if you have a friend that knows the rules already, have them teach you the game first of all, because otherwise you can end up spending so much money on something that's so big and large scale and you're just not ready for it. An example of that for me, this is probably the first game that actually had rules that were a little bit thicker than the typical rule book. Still wasn't tremendously thick, but thicker. Another game that I first played on Tabletop Simulator is a game called Dead of Winter. Now, Dead of Winter is a game where you are survivors in a zombie apocalypse and you are trying to keep your colony alive whilst fulfilling whatever the colony goal is that you draw out. So every game is going to be different depending on what difficulty you choose and what goal you end up getting. You can also, within this game, it introduced a mechanic that I love very much within board games now, where there can be a betrayer amongst you. So while you are trying to find scavenge the supplies that you need to be able to do your objective or dedicate something into the colony that is needed, there's someone else in your group that could be saying that they've put something in, but they haven't put that in. Maybe you need fuel. And you're like, we need 4 fuel to be able to complete this objective. Everyone puts in 1 fuel, but the 4th player is like, oh yeah, I can put in a fuel, and they put in the fuel. You then shuffle up that pile. You're counting out how many cards you have. There's only 3 fuel and a shovel. Who put in the shovel? You don't know. That is like some of the fun parts of these kind of deception games where you're working together. It's like semi-co-op almost, depending if there's a betrayer in it. But yeah, that is another game that I started off with, Tabletop Simulator, and it is a lot of fun. I arguably would say play it on tabletop as opposed to playing on the board games. I know it's not a very popular thing to do, but that is only because Dead of Winter is kind of, I would say, an older board game in my eyes, where they use a lot of standees, and sometimes standees are fine, but I think if you're going to buy the board game edition, just get more tokens of it, get the little cardboard circular tokens, because it's kind of annoying when you have to add like 12 zombies after like one round onto the map between the colony and the destinations, where you need to sit there and you take out the standee, you put it on, and you're putting 12 zombies in there just to get them removed overall, where instead you get these tiny little circular tokens, you just put the tokens down and the thematics are still the same. So that is Dead of Winter. At this point, I would move on to kind of the classic games. This is where I think a lot of people would usually say to go as a one-up onto your board games. Carcassonne would have been part of that within the sort of like going one-up into your board games, but these two are kind of staple pieces, I think, for anyone who is taking that leap to start getting into board games more. The first one of which is Settlers of Catan. Now, if you are getting into board games and you've already done research yourself, you have heard of Settlers of Catan. It is basically the Monopoly, I would say, of our time, and not because it plays anything like Monopoly, but because it's so well known. Do not compare Catan to Monopoly. Probably the worst comparison ever. I meant it out of how famous it is for the time we're in. Settlers of Catan is a randomised map that you'll put out, and you are trying to gather resources depending on the roll of the dice, and depending on what you get those resources, and you're trying to build roads, and you're trying to build a settlement. And it is all about getting victory points. You'll be hearing victory points a lot in the board gaming scene as victory points and Euro games become very popular, and rightfully so in a lot of board games. And Catan is just that. It is a lot of fun. I do think... So I played it a little bit later on, and the reasons are kind of a little bit later on into the video is because I do think that Catan has quite a lot of downtime between turns, especially when you're first playing. The rules are very simple to learn, and the rules are also... It's a fun game, but if you're playing it with up to like the maximum player limit that you can kind of have with it, you might sit there and do your turn within a minute, and then if you're waiting like 2 to 3 minutes for each other person to do their turn, you're waiting about almost 10 minutes before it comes back to you, and that can be kind of dull. There are games that obviously improve on that over the time, but don't let that also take you away from Catan, because within that time, within your downtime, just because you're not doing anything, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't speak to the person's turn who it is to be like, oh, I can trade with you if you wanted to trade, because you can have a monopoly over a certain item and try and trade it. This video isn't for me to fully explain what these board games are. It is just giving you my opinions on what these games are and how I ended up going to it. So I'm not going to go in depth in how Catan is obviously played, but perfect, really good game. If you wanted something a little bit more simpler, but it's also what I would say is a nice good jump to that same level, I would personally say it would be Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride is a game where you are just trying to make a railway network from one destination to the other. You will draw X amount of destination cards that you need to make, and your whole point is you're then picking up cards that will have these different coloured coordinated trains, and you need to link those colours together to create that train link and try and make it from point A to point B. It is really simple to learn. It is tons of fun to play. Turns are also relatively quick, so even if you're playing with a larger amount of people, the turns go quite quickly. And you can also get smaller editions of the game. So like the edition I've got here is of Europe. I think the traditional one's America. But you can get ones of the London Underground where, the map is much smaller and the games can go quicker, but it plays exactly the same. So if you wanted something that was a little bit faster and then still easy to learn, you can get those editions. But those are like really good games where it's just a nice jump up to give you an introduction to like how board games have sort of become now. I would arguably recommend these over the party games first of all, but it just depends on what situation you're in at the moment, because you can be in a situation where it's just you that plays board games and you just want a solo adventure board games, in which case there'll be I'd recommend a whole different array of board games if you're solo board gaming. But this was my experience and how I ended up climbing up to it, and now we kind of ended up getting into the end of where my board games kind of collection was climbing up to this final board game, which I would say is the best board game that I've ever played. Nemesis. Nemesis is by far my favourite board game, and I would conclude my board game journey with Nemesis. Not that my board game journey's done. I have so many more board games, and I've bought plenty more board games after this, and I will buy plenty more board games after this. But Nemesis was, I think, the concrete board game where I would play it and I go, I could just play this endlessly. I could play this for hours and hours and hours a day and never get bored. And that kind of showed me the amount of potential that there is in all of the board games out there. Nemesis is take Alien the movie and make that into a board game. Now, I know that there is an Alien board game, an official Alien board game, but this is the unofficial Alien board game and the better version of it. Now, you wake up out of your cryo sleep with your crew on the Nemesis, and the Nemesis, it's going down. There are problems with it. The engines are broken, the destinations have been changed, and there are intruders on the ship, not aliens, that you need to try and avoid and or kill if they're in your way whilst you try to get to the escape pods or fix the ship. Now, in a similar way to how Dead of Winter has a betrayer, that same thing can happen in Nemesis. Someone within Nemesis could be working with the corporation, and that corporation might want there to be no other survivors. So it comes back to this much more theatrical experience where you are trying to complete your objective and try and make sure that the ship, gets to the destination, or the engine gets fixed, or you get to the escape pod, and trying to help your friends. But you don't want to help the person who's got the corporation who's going to stab you in the back right at the last seconds. The game is long. The games can go on for long. I would say average you're looking at about 2 to 3 hours per game if you're playing with 3 to 4 people. And that can be a very long game for starting out, which is why it's towards the end of the list here. But as far as like theatrical games go and feeling the intenseness of your dice rolls while you're fighting off against the intruders, or exploring the map, because the map's randomly generated. You have a set layout for the ship, but you need to draw different tiles for those ships each time, and you don't know where one's going to be and where the other one's going to be, and what the token on top is going to be either. So it's just so many questions, so much mystery, so much change. It's just, I love it. It's a great mixture of strategy, luck with dice rolls, and just having the deception part of it. It ticks every single box for me that I love within board games, and which is why Nemesis is my favourite board game ever, and the ultimate game that went, yeah, I am now a board game enthusiast. I'm going to continue buying board games. Now, that was my journey for board games. I'll say there are so many board games out there, and you might, think that Nemesis is your next jump to board game as opposed to something like Ticket to Ride or Catan that I recommended. Board games are so diverse and have such a large range of variety in how play-styles are that there is a board game out there for everyone that I think can get anyone into the hobby. It's just knowing about them, and it's just having been there in the right time, having the dedication to learn it and the experience, and you will get it. If you want a quick, fun time experience, go to the party games. There are so many good party games out there like Codenames, Exploding Kittens, Munchkin, Articulate. These are games that I didn't mention on here, but I have them down like in my board game area, because they just give so many different experiences and they're so much fun. You can have games that are more campaign or thematic. I know that Nemesis is there, but I mean actual campaign games like Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon, or ISS Vanguard, or the Stalker campaign board game that recently came out. So you can end up reading these long, almost novels whilst playing the game and doing, it's an RPG. You're playing an RPG in a board game format, and these are games that you can play solo or with friends or with your partner and spend time together playing that. I just wanted to give a few notable mentions of board games that I think are just also really, really good board games, and 2 of which are very simple. The first of which is going to be Lord of the Rings, Duel for Middle-earth. This is just a 2-player game where one of you will play the Dark Forces and the other one will be playing the Fellowship, and it is a very simple card-taking game. Really easy to learn. Games last about 30-40 minutes. You can see a video of it on the channel as well. I played it with my partner, and you can see how simple it is and how fun it is and how tense it is too. The other games, this is a game I bought after Nemesis, but I wish I'd bought earlier, is a game called Heat. I don't do sports, I don't know if you can tell. I especially don't do F1. So when I heard about Heat, I was like, am I going to like it? Because I'm not really into racing and whatever, he is phenomenal. You have cards, and you need to play cards that add up to a certain number, and that number is going to be the amount of spaces that you move with on the racetrack. However, you need to manage the heat within your engine, you need to not go too fast over corners, otherwise you'll spin out. You have slipstream mechanics. It is honestly such an amazing game, especially with tons of people. If you're going from like the quick party games and you wanted your party to kind of, instead of playing, you know, Chameleon and Muffin Time, the kind of more party games, you wanted them to be a little bit more serious board games, but still a party game, he is there for you. And they do championships as well, where it will be set races that you need to do, and you can keep points and track of your points to see who wins the entire championship. Such a phenomenal game, and they have new expansions out. The other big mention I want to do, and now this one is not one that I would say to jump into straight away unless you're familiar with the video game. And this is going to be the only instance so far where I'll sit there and say, if you like the video game, buy this board game as your jump to it. And that's not Dark Souls, okay? It's not Escape the Dark Sector, The Last of Us. If you play Slay the Spire, buy Slay the Spire, the board game. I don't know what you're doing now. Stop watching this video. Go and buy Slay the Spire, the board game. This board game is so well adapted from the video game and captures everything. You have 4 different people that you can play as. You can play it co-op with other people. So if you've always wanted to play Slay the Spire co-op, I don't know if Slay the Spire 2 is going to be co-op because this can be beforehand, but if you ever wanted to play Slay the Spire 1 co-op, the board game's there for you. It's really easy to set up. The rules, there are slight differences from the game, but not that many differences from the game. So if you're very familiar with how the game works, you'll be familiar how the board game works. And even if you're not familiar with the video game, just buy the board game and learn the board game. You are creating a deck, so you start off with your starting set of decks, and each time you complete a floor, you end up getting new cards into your deck that you can choose or not, and building these combinations up, but working together to try and get your way up through the floors and kill the bosses. They even have Ascension mode in the board games, which for people that don't know from the video games, Ascension modes are basically just things that make the game harder. So if you complete a run, you can then do Ascension 1, and Ascension 1 will, you know, I'm not exactly sure what it was exactly, but it's like more elites can spawn, so harder enemies can spawn, and then when you complete Ascension 1, you can then do Ascension 2, where it's like, oh, you get less loot items or something. It's so much fun, there's so much replayability for it, and that's one of the best things with board games that you can get, is buying board games that have replayability for it, and that's what Slay the Spire is. So, after all of my spiel and all of my talking, that is going to be all of the games that kind of have gotten me to where I am now and gotten me into, well, loving the hobby so much that I'm making a channel over it. I do hope you guys are enjoying the channel that we have so far. I did want to make a live form content for you, which is what this video is, so I can try with different editing styles. We will be having reviews coming up that will be more live shot like this, because I have the Terraria board game that will be coming from Kickstarter in the next month or so, and I would love to give actual reviews of Slay the Spire, Nemesis, Stalker and other games like that. If there are any games that you want me to play or for us to play on the channel, please let us know in the comments. If there's anything that you'd like us to improve, again, please let us know. It is just starting out. I just want to bring everyone, our board game community together that loves and enjoys board games from loads of different genres, to see and experience new things and new board games, because there are so many out there. I can't know them all. I can't research them all. So getting into a community that can tell me about games that I might not know of is exactly where I want to be. So thank you guys very much for watching this video. If you did get it this far, please subscribe and like the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.